They're not. People are. And what I want to talk about first is to lay forth some groundwork in terms of the semantics of it. There's frequent conflation of the three words imagination, creativity, and innovation. They are, in fact, three different aspects of the creative process. Imagination is what goes on internally, in your own mind. Creativity is what's presented to the outside world, and it is only validated by the outside world, recognized as creative, useful, or insightful, or true. And innovation is when the damn thing works. Now, I'd like to offer you a sports metaphor, for which I humbly apologize, but it turns out that this sports metaphor works pretty well. So one way to think about it is, wait a minute, you all know baseball?
A little bit.
Okay, good. So in baseball, the batter is on deck, and he or she is contemplating what she or he might do at the plate. That's imagination. She could be thinking anything at that point. She could be thinking about laying down a bunt. She could be thinking about hitting it down the first base line. She could be thinking about chicken pot pie. She could be thinking about a guy she used to go out with. That's imagination. And no one can tell you what goes on in your own imagination. Now, creativity is when you come to bat and you try to implement your idea and the recognition of its validity inside the game of baseball. Now, first, there are two foul lines in baseball that extend into infinity, theoretically. And here's why it's about creativity. You can hit the ball, but if it's not within those two lines, it doesn't count. And in fact, can count against you. It's the same way with imagination and creativity. It has to be recognized as having validity and having utility or insight. So your imagination alone is not sufficient, but every idea, every spark of creativity, every innovation begins with, and this is another dramatic moment in terms of the slideshow. That's imagination. Now, I proposed legislation in Massachusetts to make it a Class D felony to read your PowerPoint presentation verbatim. But since we're in New Hampshire, I will read mine verbatim. Imagination. Creativity. And, of course, innovation. Can't beat that. And a man with a chicken. Yeah. What I hope to accomplish today is to engage you in some thoughts about how your imagination works, because there's a mistaken notion that as we age, imagination withers. And that's not true, because imagination is a fundamental human skill. It is arguably the one major distinctive trait between us and primates and lower life form rugby players. Imagination is fundamental to evolution because imagination allows us to predict outcomes. And the age we are now, with our blessed experience and wisdom, we are good at predicting most outcomes. Unfortunately, that becomes somewhat of a block when it comes to creativity and innovation. Because we are adept at predicting outcomes, we begin to let the assumed outcome tell us what we see. You see what you want to see, and you hear what you want to hear. For example, if you were to be completely quiet in this room, you would probably hear sounds that you weren't aware of before, even though your ears had already heard them, meaning that you hadn't looked to discern them, and you didn't hear them. So there are details in the world that you don't see. And as we get to be this age, we assume we are seeing everything, and we're not. So the first step is to go back to these young ladies here and approach the world with a renewed curiosity. And the reason you can be more imaginative at this age is that your episodic memory is much stronger than it was when you were younger. One of the common beliefs is that children are all extremely creative at a certain age. They are, because they're using their imagination in a different way than from what we do. They are at that age trying to put the world together, trying to understand how it fits together. Consequently, they're pulling together random associations to try to understand the world. As we grow older, the argument is that our imagination withers because we understand how the world fits together and we start making pragmatic decisions as opposed to associative decisions. And we're still at an age where we are probably guided less by pragmatic decisions, but out of some 45 years of practice, we are adopted in pragmatic decision making. So the first thing to do is to engage your curiosity, explore your memory as much as possible, knowing that memory is completely inaccurate. Those of you who have a good memory should become novelists because you are in fact concocting a fiction of your own life, but it's a fiction that creates meaning, and it's a fiction that you can draw on as you seek to understand the other aspects of your life. Now, the last thing I'll say about this is that we have a man with a chicken. The key at any age to being creative lies not in any mental skills, not in any tests. It really lies within your passion. And once you discover that passion, you are going to be successful. Let me give you an example. How many of you are familiar with Frank Schubert, otherwise known as Franz? Arguably the greatest songwriter in the Western canon, and that's with one N. Not everybody's a Latin man, even though we're in Latin study. He wrote 716 German Lied in his lifetime. He died, I think, at the age of 31. 716, out of which we regularly hear about 75. I was at a concert in Des Moines, Iowa, which usually gets around with applause. It's all right, though. It's early in the morning. You guys are new. I was at a concert where they were singing all 716 in chronological order, and I found out why we only hear 75. A lot of them stink. I mean, they're awful. And it's embarrassing because he's the greatest songwriter in the Western canon. Even the Beatles, you familiar with them?
Yeah.
They recorded 120 hours of music before they broke up. And they released approximately 12 hours, an interesting 10% figure, before they started getting greedy and releasing outtakes. But think about that 10% that they released. Did we really need, why don't we do it in the road? I don't think so. The point is that Lennon, McCartney, the Beatles, and Franz Schubert and Thomas Edison, they had the passion to keep doing the work over and over again. Because the more you do the work, the more you see the questions that are inherent in that discipline. And the more you see the questions, the more likely you are, because questions are rooted in curiosity, the more likely you are to be innovative. It begins your imagination and it moves when you present it to the public, it's creative, and when it succeeds, when you get your chicken on your lap, that is innovation. So we've asked Graf and Lisa Gray to talk about their work as artists and thinkers and their process a little bit. And then we're going to throw it open for, nah, we're not going to do that. I think we learned our lesson last night. Anyway, I think you want to go first on ground. Why don't you go first because we have to switch tracks. Switch this.
Well, since I left Exeter, I have pursued a career in what used to be called crafts, now it's called arts. We'll get into that discussion, but about 6 years ago, I had some minor health ailments, and I developed a severe allergy to the process I was working with in dyeing textiles. And I used that moment to kind of recreate my life and take back my health and change everything that I was doing. So I brought some examples in my work, slides I don't know if it's easy to see, that has sort of been the last 5 years a strong force in me. And I think the women in this room might understand a little better, but as I started to change, I made peace with the fact that I had not allowed photographs taken of me. And I think if you look at your book, I tried to have none of me in there. There might be one of me playing field hockey, but it's kind of hard to distinguish. So it started way back then. And so my daughter has very few pictures of me all throughout her life. And I thought that had to change. So I ended up starting to ask people on my daily walk to take my picture. And then I'd take their picture to just get comfortable with being still and allowing that moment to happen. And it morphed into, now working with double images of me and something I'm looking at, which is what you'll see over there as I'm moving into trying to see where I'm going with that and bringing it into my textile world and adding stitching. But the other offshoot of that is I've started teaching classes on creativity and play. And for me, that's the connection, is to try and get back to that place where you forget about what you know and just try to discover what's there. So I teach classes where we use dance, we use play, we use writing, we use we paint blindfolded, sometimes with your toes, and try and help people unlock what's inside them, because I believe that all throughout life we're creative, and I know many stories of people who have gone back to learn how to draw, how to paint, how to whatever they want to do, and it can be incredibly fulfilling. So I thought I'd read a short letter that was written by Kurt Vonnegut to the students of Ms. Lockwood's 2006 English class at Xavier High School in New York City, which I think is good advice for all of us. She had asked her students to write to their favorite authors and invite them to come talk. Kurt Vonnegut, as the story goes, was the only one who answered. So he says, "Dear Xavier High School and Miss Lockwood and Mrs. Perrin, McFeely, Batten, Moore, and Step, I thank you for your friendly letters. You sure know how to cheer up a really old geezer, 84, in his sunset years. I don't make public appearances anymore because I now resemble nothing so much as an iguana." What I had to say to you, moreover, would not take long. To wit, practice any art, music, singing, dancing, acting, drawing, painting, sculpting, poetry, fiction, essays, reportage, no matter how well or badly, not to get money and fame, but to experience becoming, to find out what's inside you to make your soul grow. Seriously, I mean starting right now, do art and do it for the rest of your lives. Draw a funny or nice picture of Ms. Lockwood and give it to her. Dance home after school and sing in the shower, and on and on. Make a face in your mashed potatoes. Pretend you're Count Dracula. Here's an assignment for tonight. I hope Ms. Lockwood will flunk you if you don't do it. Write a 6-line poem about anything but rhyme. No fair tennis without a net. Make it as good as you possibly can, but don't tell anybody what you're doing. Don't show it or recite it to anybody, not even your girlfriend or parents or whatever, or Ms. Lockwood. Okay? Tear it up into teeny weeny pieces and discard them into widely separated trash receptacles. You will find that you have already been gloriously rewarded for your poem. You've experienced becoming, learned a lot more about what's inside you, and you have made your soul grow. God bless you all. Kurt Vonnegut. And his awesome signature is a picture of himself with a cigarette hanging out of his mouth.
Thank you. I want to offer a rejoinder. I'm not sure. Is it a rejoinder? An addendum. I want to underscore something that Lisa said. As you think about your process, your metacognition, notice the exercises that she gives to her class, and that each one of them requires the student to see the world in a slightly different way. And that's the core of creativity. Problems are like mountains. You can't move them. The only thing you can move is yourself. And if you can't solve the problem from where you're standing, you have to change the way you're looking at the problem. And so these exercises that allow an individual to see the world or feel the world or hear the world differently are in fact lessons and memories planted that would lead to creativity. And now I think we'll ask Graf to sing in three-part harmony.
I do play the piano. 25 years.
I'm so pleased to come to Exeter with a project, to describe a project that is my current love. And the reason it's so significant, I think, to be here is because this is where my love of theater began. I lived in that house, which used to be sculpture gallery. And I remember so well the sensation of being at Exeter, to be that of all things are possible, all things are possible. I was on school year abroad, Rod Merriman was teaching, and I told him I wanted to write an opera, and he said, "Great, write an opera." There was no question as to whether I had written any music before, whether I had an idea for an opera. I thought The Basket of Red Death would be a good opera, and I started to write an overture. And there were so many moments like that in Exeter. Irving Forbes came to me one day and said, if you can play the concerto, we'll also play the orchestra. Now, when does a 16-year-old hear it?
Yeah.
So that to me has been, there was a promise too, which is that the arts really count. That what happens on the stage or at the movies, what we are exposed to, shapes our lives in ways that nothing else does. Teachers travel. There are places where we go to see at the most extreme points how people are involved in life. And for me, that has been the theater. So I'm coming with good news, which is that I have a project which got funded, more or less, as theater projects are funded in New York. And it represents the culmination of my work. First of all, directing. I did go on to direct an opera, write an opera for Minnesota Opera. And, but I've always wanted to push the theater forward in some way. And I think that at this time in our lives, that is also a consideration. Not only to ask, how will this affect an audience, but will I leave something? What is my legacy? And to do a production, I think I've always known this, but to do a production at that level, where you're hoping to leave a mark on New York theater, involves an extraordinary amount of time. Far more time than you can put into anything that you are putting up. And that, for whatever reason, I gave myself the time. I found other people who wanted to do the same. That would be a group of designers and actors, and they have been rehearsing, and I've been working with designers now for almost a year and a half, without any pay. The production itself will cost more than $500,000, but the people who have made it, the people who put it together, are doing it because they want to leave a mark. So what I'm going to describe to you and visualize through the sketches that were made is the process that I had over that period of time with the set designer, Charlie Corcoran. Charlie has done over 100 shows in New York, many off-Broadway, nothing on Broadway. So he's perfect, in a perfect place to see this as a great advance for himself. And that's also significant, that the people that your cohorts, your tribe, agrees to give to the project that little extra something that they probably wouldn't be able to do anywhere else. But you do it together, as we did at Exeter. Because we went so far together, it seemed like the norm. And You did so generously. So this is what I'm going to talk about. Now, the creative process for me is almost entirely about clearing out my mind and believing that I have the time to solve the problems ahead without taking any shortcuts. So I pretend that I'm in jail, and I'm going to spend the next 20 years there, so I might as well.
So you went to Exeter too?
So I might as well give it all the time it needs. And with Bill Densmore, who's here, I have had a fantastic time since the last reunion, realizing something in technology that he and I came to believe was the answer to some other problems, journalism and media problems. But it is hard, and Bill knows this very well. It's very hard for me to move from technology to thinking about the play and back again. And so my advice here on creativity is that you may not be thinking about how much clutter and space is taken up by your life, your day. For me, it's practically all of the space inside on a good day. If I'm really humming, I'm completely involved. To do something creative, to do something innovative requires that space to open up. And so Charlie and I got into this process together. The play, Anna Christie, 1921, Pulitzer Prize winner. It's been done a few times in the United States, most recently Natasha Richardson and Liam Neeson at Lincoln Center. Like so many plays by O'Neill, it usually starts in a bar, and it's usually a fairly dark background to the story. And this is a problem, because O'Neill's plays, in my mind, are far more redemptive, far more transcendent of the harsh realities of life. Nevertheless, they're done very realistically. If you go to New York today, you'll see Long Day's Journey into Night done as heavy and as depressing as possible. And people don't stay for the whole thing. I didn't stay for the whole thing. So I'm trying to turn over a new leaf also for O'Neill. And you'll see in the design, first you're going to see in the slides, I'm not going to get past the text here, so just my notes to myself. So first we're going to see what you see at the bottom of the screen. Oh, can't quite see it.
Slide forward.
Slide forward, or pull up. Okay, there isn't very much of this. O'Neill says, Johnny the Priest Saloon near South Street, New York City. This is a real place. O'Neill visited this spot and lived above the bar for a long time. A small back room, a large window looking out on the street, a double swinging door, a small showcase, a few bottles of case goods, half barrels of cheap whiskey, a family entrance opening on a side street. Now that's typical of O'Neill's description of his sets. Beautiful description, extremely realistic, and in a way contains no seeds of drama. It doesn't point to any particular direction that this play would take, and usually it's done in the manner you see right here, which is a very heavy set with a ceiling, with walls, and so forth. This second, there are three sets here. This is the stern of a barge and anchor at the outer harbor of Provincetown. He describes the fog, he describes lanterns, he describes an immense coil of rope, and the other things that you would see on the boat. And these sketches are what Charlie did, and this is how I like to begin, to ask a designer to simply draw what the author describes. The program, if you will, that we can't get past, the architectural program. The interior of a barge cabin, narrow, low-ceiling compartment, the door leading to the sleeping quarters, and some large lockers and some rectangular windows. Now, I put this in front of you because I want you to see what we decided to do with that. Today, an audience is expecting a great deal more in the way of a container, a framework in which to put the play. And that's what we began to work on. So the next slide is our first revisualization of this. For me, the story is about the sea. It's about the transformative power that Anna finds in her first experience of the sea. She has been, her father has left her with farmers in St. Paul, Minnesota, landlocked because he hates the sea. He's a former bosun, but he has lost his father, his brothers, and his sons to the sea. He has a tremendous fear and loathing. And he's spending the end of his life as a full barge captain. Anna is forlorn and bereft, and she is a prostitute in a house of prostitution, and decides to come east to see her father, whom she hasn't seen since she was 5 years old. And in doing so, she finds the sea. He takes her out on the barge, the experience of the fog, the experience of the quiet of the sea. It cleanses her, it redeems her, it gives her a feeling of starting her life over. So the first thing we decided to do was put the sea on stage. And today you can do that. You can actually put water on those stages, about 5 inches of water. And then in the background, there's a great deal of projection to give you the sky. I didn't particularly like this because I feel like I'm on a dock. I don't like the feeling that there are wooden supports that go to nothing in particular. Here's our second set. This is the stern of the boat where Anna meets the love of her life. This is a shipwrecked sailor who interrupts her reverie and her healing. And within 15 minutes or so, once he's on board, he falls in love with her. And so the story becomes a love story. But this to me looked too much like a modern ferry boat. And here is the indoor cabin. These are just items that I know are necessary. Again, it's a bit of a program. Then we decided to really go someplace with this. So I said, let's have Anna come to New York to a place which is quite forgiving, dismal in a way, and let's see her under the bridges and confronting for the first time a big city. And when we go to and she's walking along the waterfront looking for her father at Johnny's bar. She comes to the bar, and so this is what we came up with. The wall is gone, the walls on the side are gone, there's just one door upstage. Actors can enter from either side, it's completely wide open, and there's a broken bridge to hold things down. We can include as much or as little in terms of different set details, but the back of the set, as you can see, is transparent. So the sea and the sky are always visible. This is key. And then when you go to the boat, it's really quite a magical place. Fog, lanterns, and then the back of that back wall is transparent, so that you can barely see it here, but you can see the shipwrecked sailor with his shirt off coming out of the water, the rowboat that he was in. So the set becomes completely transparent, and you can see all of the action when you need to see it. And then in the last act, we make this a very small, warm place, flowers. And so we are taking the audience then on a journey from Anna's alienation to her finding the two men in her life. Part of this depends on new technology. There's a great deal of new lighting technology that's available, projection technology. Also, we can build pallets of aluminum to move those sets in and out, motorized pallets that will make it seem as if by magic the sea and the sky are producing this effect, this action that you're observing. But the most important thing for me is that we start with a woman who is looking for a home and for someone to love. Unlike O'Neill, who introduces us to Anna at the end of the first act, I introduce you to Anna in the very first moment, so that you know that it's her story, and she finds humanity. That's what we came up with in the hours that we met. The show will open if we about $150,000 more, it turns out, on July 26th at a wonderful space in New York, Signature Theater. So I just wanted to bring that picture of our collaboration to you. Charlie is enormously talented, as you can tell. A lot of this is fairly advanced photoshopping, the use of three-dimensional imaging. But this is what technology has had to offer in the field of a lot of possibilities. So that's my spiel. That's my talk.
I'm reminded of a very insightful statement from a college student of mine in creative writing class, and she said, Eugene O'Neill, he had issues. Why would you ever leave teaching? So, at the risk of great peril, of course, we would like to open it up to discussion somewhat, questions. There is a real imaginary gift certificate, and I've decided during these idle moments of concentration that the gift certificate, which is imaginary but in a real envelope, will go to the person who is the most concise in his or her observations and remarks. You've been in an extra class. But what I'd like to have people think about or share is that we're at an age, I believe, where some of the more pressing, pragmatic questions and issues in our lives are close to resolution. We've raised children, we've kicked their asses through college, and they're out on their own. And now we have this lifetime behind us that we can capitalize on. And how do you begin to do that? How do you go back to the passions that either you spent your career on or that you abandoned at some point in your life, and you maintain the productivity of your mind by using your imagination? And I'm going to take a liberty, if I may, Brad. Because every good conversation begins with bald guys. Beard's help. Beard's help. The bald is far more important. The reason I want to ask Brad to talk a little bit is that Brad worked as a lawyer, right? Right. And he's, in the last 2 years, has written 2 novels. And I think that's quite an interesting shift. Of course, in Cambridge, if you can't remember somebody's name and think you should know them, I always say to them, so how's your novel coming? Because everyone in Cambridge either thinks they're writing a novel or thinks they should be. So just talk to us a little bit about how you got started on that.
Sure. I mean, I had a career as a lawyer. When I left here, I thought, time to be a writer. And then, the pressures of trying to make sure I had income were overwhelming. So I went to law school eventually. About 5 or 6 years ago, I took a long boat trip, and at that point said, maybe now is the time to start doing something that I've always wanted to do. So it was about 6 or 7 years ago, I guess, I started writing. I was still practicing law, and more or less half-time, and started writing. Just really loved the process. And so I did less and less law and more writing. And about a year ago, I just stopped practicing law. And I just like the process. I mean, I've made a few attempts so far at getting a publisher to look at it and put it in the first book, and a little local publisher has expressed some interest in it up. But it's mainly the process. I like the writing, I like the revising, and I like the procrastinating about not writing. I do more the last thing than I do revising the other two together. But that's part of the process too. When I first started doing it, I said, there's some writers, 9 o'clock in the morning, I'm going to sit down and start writing. So I resolved to do that. And But I worked it out, and the way I worked it out is I start writing about 4 in the afternoon, even though I sit down at 9 in the morning.
Sharpen the pencils.
Yeah, no, and I like the process. It has given me, reason to get up and be excited about today.
How do you feel about publishing? Is that not important?
Well, I'd like to have it published. I'm at a stage of life where I don't have to have it published so that I can keep it, which is a nice thing. And so yeah, I'd like to have it published, but I'm really soft on it, liking to market it and sell it. So that.
There's nothing to prove.
But do you still feel the urge to? I mean, I wonder sometimes about like what the impulse is to writing and feel it. Like when I was at Exeter, I felt like I had more of an impulse to write, and part of it was because I knew I had all these super intelligent, super sensitive people. This great audience right there. I mean, so to me, it's kind of a foreign concept thing. Write a book, but nobody reads. I mean,
well, first of all, there are lots of people that read
yeah,
both of them, and it's mostly as part of the process of revising it. One of the nice things about it is at the last reunion here, I was kind of done with like the first or second draft of the first book, and I bumped into David Weber, who was one of my semesters senior year, and told him about the process. We had another interesting common. We both working on the marriage issue at that point, and he said, "Well, let me read it." So I did, and he gave me first tremendous support. He told me about it was worthwhile, and then he gave me all kinds of advice on how to make it better. And since then, he has, I think he read my first book 3 times now. I have a group of people back in Seattle that do the same thing. So there's lots of people that have read it and have good ideas on how to revise it. So in a sense, I do have an audience. Now, I'd like to see somebody publish it, and, be able to, walk up to a bookstore and find it on the shelf. That would be really great. And I think that's going to happen someday. But the part of it, I don't think about. That's not the part of it I think about. The part I think about is I'm going to take a look at the next chapter.
And Brad, what are you doing between 9 and 4? Between the time you start?
Well, let's see. I learned how to cook.
On your way to writing.
Because I've never been at home. I'm a lawyer, and all this stuff, 12 hours a day. And I've never had time to do any of those other things. And I had lots of time to do those things. I also fly. I'm teaching somebody to fly an airplane. And I was telling Graf, I was the board chair of the journalism class for a number of years in Seattle. So I've been doing other things with my time. And maybe other people can do more, but I find I'm good for 2 or 3 hours of writing.
So the way to accomplish great things is actually do the great things unintentionally while you're procrastinating.
That's it.
Actually, I want to extrapolate something from what Brad said that I think is helpful for all of us. Notice that he said he really likes the process. And that is a key as you check your own imagination and creativity. It depends on what you're passionate about. Well, nobody ever tells you how to find your passion. Now it's just say, go be passionate or find your passion. But listening to him talk about loving the process, think about when you get lost in a task, when you find yourself in what some psychologists call a moment of flow, where you're not aware of time, you're not aware of your surroundings, but you're intensely focused on this project. That's when you're close to finding your passion. And that's not to say it's going to be easy. He has, all writers do, that have that time period where nothing happens. And you whip yourself into a sort of masochistic frenzy, at least I do. And that is part of the process as well, because so much of what happens in your imagination is incubation. And we've all had the experience of waking up with an idea. I used to work for clients, and if I woke up with an idea, I wanted to charge them for 8 hours of sleep. Because I wouldn't have had the idea if I hadn't slept on it. But what's happening is that you're see, I change shirts now like other men change cars. I think that But having that incubation period is very important, and that time period where you're not directly thinking about it. And I think Lisa's mentioning of play is also an example of flow. And we as adults don't think of ourselves as being playful, but in fact, when you get in a moment of flow where you're engaged and you're intensely involved, it has the same feeling as play that you had when you were a child. And it can be extremely productive for you. So as you take a look at what sorts of things that to engage your imagination with, it doesn't have to be writing a novel. It can be whatever it is that engages you at that intense level. Anyone else want? Yeah, Parker.
I just wanted to follow up on that, because that phrase the notion of legacy, it's sort of present also in I mean, I think that all of us at Exeter got the impression that superstardom was a requirement. We all were, we lived in terror of everybody else who was so brilliant, who was so competitive. One of the great things about coming back to the media is that you realize that not everybody's a billionaire. Not everybody is a billionaire. That a lot of us have chosen to do things that are not prestigious. Let's just put it that way. And I think one of the things that is critical if you think about sort of second lives is that we think of passion less than legacy. Because deciding what your legacy is going to be is really a matter of deciding what you personally care about, less than what the world around you assigns as being important. I mean, we all went through careers where we were fighting to define, defend, build reputations in someone in light of how others saw us. And, we're at a point where, having fought through all the crap, we ought to be able to step back and say, just don't give a damn anymore. Frankly, this is what I want to write novels. I want, there are things that I care about, not because they make me rich, they make me famous, they make, my legacy is going to be what I did for myself. I'm going to recreate myself as what I really care about. And I think that's something that's tremendously amazing. It often gets lost among us because we were all so extremely well programmed to be super achievers. And super achievers in terms that were pretty narrowly confined. And what's surprising, I think, if you look around the table, is how many of us didn't lock into that, didn't follow the path. Brad and I were teaching each other. We really should be a dentist out in Ireland. He said, well, I only know about doing dentistry without much stuff. And I said, well, we don't have much stuff, And dare say you're going to be a better dentist where I am than some guy from New York. And it's really true. I mean, we ended up doing things, he in his first life, me in my second life, which had nothing to do with the kind of expectations of Park Avenue practice. And yet, there's a tremendous tension. And I think if you approach that as you try to real sense of not just passion, but of legacy, so anyway, just a thought about it.
One of the things that's inherent in what Mike was saying is that a refusal to become disengaged. That the more you're engaged with your imagination, the more you can ward off the secret unspoken horrors of our generation, which is Alzheimer's and Parkinson's and other neurodegenerative diseases. To use a simple sports phrase, use it or lose it. Exactly. But you have to be engaged with it, and you have to be doing something, whether it's going out and doing your garden or coming to my house and washing my windows. Much appreciated. Pardon?
Well, the conversation is another excellent event with a new author named Dan Brown and something like that. And I'm an academic. I've been writing about academic stuff for so many years. That has trained me that I'm not able to write a novel or a I think it was trying. It's just follow a few little tricks, like start with the one from the point of view of the character who's got the most. So that was a bit of encouragement there. That was a bit of encouragement too. And that came by way of learning from our kids. Now, most people will remember a day when their kids were lined up around the block at night to wait their turn to get a book in pre-order that was that thick, had sophisticated paragraphs and a bigger vocab than any book available to them in their school system. And they got that book, paying out of what was for them a largish amount of money, read them, reflecting it as one of their most prized possessions, and read it right through with their friends, sometimes in company, until they got to the end and then they started again. You know what that was. And in allowing herself to think what probably she'd been trained, that she wasn't allowed to think, namely, there could be magic in the world. The author maybe taught herself the same lesson that Mike Hurley finds when he goes out to the middle of the Congo People's Republic. He finds out that there's a whole continent of people who are saying, you know, there's magic in it.
But I have a question. How many of you are writing a novel or think you should be? Good. Because I wanted to respond to something Parker said. He said, and I've been teaching creative writing now for 16, 17 years, and I expect your full sympathy for that. But Parker asked the question is if he has been trained in academic writing, or if you've been trained in legal writing, can I write a novel? And my response to that is, why not? Because what you bring to that writing is distinctly your own. And that is the most valuable gift you can have. And your memories, your experiences you're the only one in the world who sees the world the way you do. And if your use of language bespeaks more of academia, the more you live with those words, the more you'll take possession of them, the more you'll change. I think that's equally true in other arts disciplines. So my advice is to just go for it. And also, one of the great challenges for a writer, for me at least, is knowing where it's going to go. And thinking you can't write anything until you know where it's going to go. Writing is not putting down what you know. Writing is discovery. And you have to be willing to fling your ego aside and dive in and see what you find. And again, you can't let your assumption of your career's use of language dictate whether or not you do it. Because you can write, actually probably a brilliant novel in legalese.
About the aforementioned affidavit.
No, if you have academia, you're hopeless.
But both of my books have big lawsuits right in the trial. They're not about lawyers in trial, but it's in there. That's the creative part.
But actually, lawyers would be great playwrights and novelists because what is a trial but the argument of which story is more true?
Exactly.
It's all about the lawyers have to put together a narrative. Bill?
I've been enjoying watching the Premier League soccer. He was Premier League soccer last couple of years. Soccer is really my book, but I really enjoy the commentators. And so, for example, in American football, someone will say that was a good foul because it prevented a touchdown, so it was worth it. They'll say that was a cynical foul, which I think is fascinating. But the language that I really like is when someone strikes the ball well and it goes into the goal, they'll say he struck it with belief. And when it goes over the goal, they'll say the player lacked belief. And I think that's actually what we're talking about here. It's really a quality of having belief that allows you to take imagination and act on it and be creative. Or to, I think Graf, you were talking about your belief. So when I listen to this, to me, and I just found that, I think that's why I watch it. I just love that language. And I think it applies to everything we do. To lack belief is to hold us back and have belief is to allow us to do things. So I just think that belief is a big part of it, in my own feeling.
Well, I never believed in magic, but I now believe in the powers of mysterious magic by watching Donald Trump's hair stay.
I would just say precisely that much as I totally.
He wants the
And when would you do that?
Much as I wish to imagine the novel that I'm going to write after a career both doing legal practice and academia, I also imagine that it's not a good idea to postpone the project of being creative until all that happens, but that the right idea would be to try to be creative and imaginative in anything I do today, because tomorrow may not get
Yeah.
Yes.
And in fact, I think most people don't understand that the law profession is a citadel of creativity. Because you have to see what other people can't see. And you have to draw conclusions that other people don't. So it's not that you are not creative, it's that you don't recognize it, and our society doesn't give it that term. We mistakenly assume that imagination is the providence of artists. And it's not. I mean, artists are supposed to be creative, but you use your imagination every day. Even as simple and as mundane as deciding what to have for lunch. That is a portion of your imagination. Predicting outcome and judging from your episodic memories. Yes. What?
Oh.
Go ahead.
I have a couple of comments. Can you hear me? Well, first of all, I want to thank Ted for making it possible to have this connection, and I guess it has some relevance to innovation. We approached the Exeter IT team, and we were somewhat surprised to learn that no one had ever asked for this before, and we were especially surprised that it was a couple of people from the class of '71 that were breaking the ice. It seems like it would have been more likely that that would have happened with some of our younger cohorts. But in any event, we do see this potential. It would be great if there would normally be an opportunity for people to connect virtually that couldn't make it to a reunion, and it would, obviously be an opportunity for Exeter to connect with more folks. So that would be a good thing. But my comments directly, the first one is I just want to put a plug in for simulations and gaming as a means of both stoking imagination and creativity, and also the comment that Dan made about staying engaged. I think that that is something, especially if you're looking for some way to kind of get yourself started in terms of those kinds of activities, and it doesn't have to be. It can be actual physical gaming, like Sam Perkins, and it can tell you about soccer at the age of 60 plus, or it can be virtual gaming online, or just a card game, whatever. It's really great, both socially and from the point of view of stimulating. And my first job out of college, which I had a degree in history, was working for a historical game design company. So I actually got to use my history degree in a way that wasn't just teaching, which was kind of cool. And my second comment is with respect to I think Dan is totally on target in his description of what's happening. The one thing that he said that I was a little concerned about, I guess, was the definition of innovation as success. And the examples of the Beatles and of Schubert, only 10% of their stuff being worthwhile. My experience in working with creative people, and I started out at the game company working with a lot of creative people, there's certainly I think that 10% success ratio may even be generous. There's an awful lot of failure involved in creativity, and I think that's the way humans learn. I think even just everybody, when they learn, you learn from your mistakes more than from your successes, really. So I guess I'm a little troubled with the definition of or leaving out the failure as being part of innovation. I mean, you look at the Lisa, right? The Steve Jobs Lisa machine never made any money, or the Newton, another Apple flop. I mean, those things were clearly, in my mind, innovative and advanced the ball, although they weren't really successful innovations, I guess you could say. So anyway, those are my comments.
Thank you, and thank you for wearing a tie this early.
Oh yes, on the tie, right? Yeah. Well, I want you to know I am traditionally dressed for Harkness. I have a pair of blue jeans on.
Well, please don't show us.
I think that was a good comment there, and I actually remember Eric's comment, very concise comment he made. I think very important. Success and an imagination, I think, should be in everything. Probably it's important not to consider that, okay, I will be creative and I will try to be imaginative by doing that, and it's a big goal, like I'm going to write the novel or I'm going to become an artist. Because it can just be in everyday life and in everyday work. And I think that is, we need to do more of that. In my work, we do that. We try to do that. We try to be open. We try to look at new ways of doing things, because traditionally it's a lot easier to flow with what is accepted standards. And so you don't have to end up writing a novel or end up painting a great painting to actually utilize creativity and imagination. And also, I think one should be careful not to worry about the judgment that was pointed out. Is it successful? Is it 10% mean success? I mean, if quality and imagination and creativity and wonderment in food production were considered just based on success, then McDonald's would be putting out the best food in the world. It's not. So I think that is something, even if it is a failure. You try something, if it doesn't work, and that's how you learn to get better. But if only 2% of the people like it, then it's okay, because it may be wonderful for those 2%.
I would throw out, Mike, that fear of failure is probably not our problem, but getting out of our habits, getting past the flow that we enjoy every day, waking up to what's possible is increasingly difficult. It's not as easy as saying, now I'll be creative, because the circuits are already closed.
And can I throw out one other thing I think is important to throw into the dialogue is what we're doing right now. How much of that process can be improved by being open to other participants? The success of our work, I was talking with Mike about this last night when we get together, we do some similar things, and it's engaging in others. And we both sort of apply the Harkness process out there in the world, in the middle of that participatory process, to get input from people who have no formal education necessarily. But we see in the world of conservation and development that very often that process doesn't occur. It's the smart guys with PhDs in Washington and New York who design these programs, and they go out there and say, here, we're going to fix the world by doing this. And everybody else locally has to listen to it, instead of listening to people locally about what they're saying. But even our own creativity here, this process is great, where we all get stuff from each other, and how can we continue?
I don't want to cut you too short here, but we are out of time, and the suspense and tension are starting to fill in the room. Many of you are wondering, and you stayed only to the end to see if you might get the imaginary $100 gift certificate. Wow. And after much deliberation with no one of any import, I have decided that as much as I want to give it to Roberto, it has to go to somebody who made a comment, who maintained a concise and succinct nature. So in a rarity in our class, the only time this may ever happen, we have to give this to Eric Friedman. Who not only unwillingly limited himself to 10 minutes, but also used the word concise. And so, here ended the morning lesson. Thank you. The prize winner is